Good morning, everybody. It's my great pleasure to introduce Denise Morrison. Denise's story provides ample fodder for both sides of the nurture versus nature debate. Her father was an AT&T executive, excellent company, and dinner conversations when Denise was a kid were as likely to be about the results of a recent test market as they were about how the high school football team was doing. So much so, in fact, that when her family gets together now for Thanksgiving, there are not one but two CEOs. Denise's sister Maggie is also CEO of a public company sitting around the table. And I learned this morning when Denise showed me a photograph of her, amazingly enough, granddaughter who was born but a week ago. She already had a copy of the Wall Street Journal in her cot.
The next power woman.
The next power woman. So there's a big nature story there. When it comes to nurture, Denise, after Boston College, started working at Procter & Gamble in Boston, and P&G's loss was ultimately Campbell's gain, but not before Denise had been to Pepsi-Cola, to Nestle, to Nabisco, and to Kraft before arriving at Campbell nearly 10 years ago and taking over as president and CEO in 2011. So that's about as good a nurturing as somebody who's going to drive a business, lead a business, and lead sales and marketing organizations could possibly have. It's a great pleasure to have you here, Denise. Thank you. Thank you so much for making the trip. You've introduced a process called disciplined creativity. Can you tell everybody what that's about?
Yep. At Campbell's, we have a dual mandate. We need to drive growth in our core business, and we also have to create new products for new occasions, new consumers, and expand into new geographies. So strengthen the base and create the new. In order to do that, we had to jumpstart our innovation. And that's not reckless. It has to be incredibly disciplined. And I actually went to IDEO. I was doing some work with them, and I said, well, how could we learn from the way innovation companies do innovation? And what I observed there is they broke into small teams around ideas, and then when they finished their projects, they'd come back to the center, and they would morph to the next set of ideas. And I said, this is a great idea. So what we did at Campbell's is we created cross-functional breakthrough teams, and actually our agencies are part of these breakthrough teams. What I observed was that when people were working on the base business, it's so large and there's a crisis every day that innovation became a hobby. So pulling people off the base to work in these cross-functional breakthrough teams created a disciplined organization within a big company, had the resources of the big company, but the nimbleness to be able to be creative. And there was a whole process that we put in place to get from the funnel innovation to the tunnel in commercializing products. So that's the message, is that it's not reckless, but it is a very creative process. And we found that breaking down into small cross-functional groups with CCID, supply chain, sales, the agencies, et cetera, created like small organizations within the larger organization to get things done.
One of your favorite, or one of the phrases you've invented, which I adore, is thinking outside the can. Can you talk about what that has meant for the company?
Sure. Well, I think thinking outside the can, our Campbell's soup can is so iconic. And there's such a gravitational pull when you're a 140-year-old company to do things that you're comfortable with or that made you successful in the past. So we came out with this mantra when I became CEO of focusing forward, focusing outward to consumers and ahead to create our future. And so we had to think outside the can. And that was, I mean, look, I'm dressed like a cheetah. How many CEOs wear a cheetah jacket? But the cheetah is it's the speediest animal on the planet. It goes from 0 to 62 in 3 seconds. Campbell's had to be faster at innovation, and we had to accelerate our innovation to about 15% of sales. You know, the cheetah uses the tail as a rudder, And innovation requires course correction, which we had to do as we navigated the new occasions and new consumers. And a cheetah hunts by vision, not by scent. So you have to have a vision, which starts with understanding the consumer and what they want. So I'm all about sales growth here, and to the degree that ideas and innovation can impact positive, profitable sales growth, that's what thinking outside the can really means to me.
You mentioned that the company, it's a 140-year-old company. The most seminal lesson I learned at Omnicom University was that in the war between strategy and culture, culture eats strategy for breakfast, which is no play on your cheetah. But the talk a little bit about how you've addressed cultural issues.
Yeah. Culture is critically important to enable ideas and innovation to flourish. And to do that, you have to literally wipe out fear and stress from your culture. So that, because people can't be emotionally tied up in fear and stress and have the freedom to create. So what we have done at Campbell's is we're a culture that literally lives our values. And when I had my top 300 people together and we talked about living our values, we all decided that there was something missing, and that what our culture really called for was a value of leadership courage. And that's the courage to think unconventionally, to challenge the status quo, to not be afraid to fail. And failing, if when you think about it, Steve Jobs, when he invented the Lisa, it was a miserable failure, but he couldn't have gotten to the Macintosh unless he learned from the Lisa. And so at Campbell's, we want people to push and take calculated risks, all with the highest integrity, but not be afraid to fail and learn from that. I took my leadership team to Boulder, Colorado to meet with Jim Collins, who wrote the book Great by Choice. And he talked about the concept or the metaphor of you got to fire a lot of bullets before you get a cannonball. And the art of this is, as you're firing bullets, to recognize when an idea can become a cannonball and put your money down, and also recognize when it's a dud, pull it off the table. And so we're trying to operate our culture of experimentation, calculated risk-taking, high integrity, and a nimbleness. And we're not all the way there. It's definitely an aspiration. But we've actually invested in reworking our building to create collaborative spaces at Campbell's and to produce a culture where people will get together and really share ideas.
I think we've got some, well, I hope we've got some pictures of the before and after of the building. Oh. If you could show those.
It was like working in an old school.
Is it possible
to show? But it is amazing how the psychology of setting up furniture in different spaces and giving people opportunities to connect differently really spurs the conversations that are necessary. So that's the old Campbell's.
You changed, yeah.
And that's the new Campbell's, the new face of Campbell's. And quite frankly, it's in Camden, New Jersey, which, for those of you who know Camden, New Jersey, it's a very tough city. We have the view of Philadelphia, but we wanted to invest in Camden, not leave Camden, because our people are also the volunteer force. We do a lot of work in Camden with hunger and obesity and trying to make our community a better place.
Flick through another view, that's as it was.
These are the old cubes. And now the new ones that are much more open. And collaboration spaces. By the way, it was really hard to get people to use the collaboration spaces. They thought they were the waiting room for the meeting room. So we had to incent people to use the collaboration spaces. Now it's a much more normal behavior.
Compulsory collaboration.
We're still trying to get people to sit in the blue chairs.
You talked a little bit about Steve Jobs, and you talked about going to IDEO, and you talked about going to see Jim Collins. What are the other, where else do you go, and what other sources do you have for inspiration and creativity?
Yeah. I mean, I love to read. I love reading stories about real people and facing real challenges. You know, the Steve Jobs book I mentioned was very inspiring. I also love talking to people. I think as a CEO, sometimes you can get so caught up in your world. It's just so important to keep in touch with the people that you work with, people outside the company, I think they're the greatest sources of inspiration. And the most important person on the planet is the consumer, really listening to the consumer. For example, our team decided that we wanted to really understand millennials and build food and beverages for the next generations. So they went out and they lived and they shopped with millennials and they ate with them and they cooked with them. They went to pop-up bars. I couldn't get them to come back to work. It was really something. But that listening to the consumer and getting inspired by what the consumer needs before they know they want it is a big spur for innovation.
And connected to that desire to spend time with, understand and learn about millennials, I know you spent a lot of time on the West Coast and really digging deep into the world of digital. Can you talk about, well, I know why you did it, but can you talk about what you got out of it?
About
going to the West Coast and spending so much time understanding how millennials are using digital.
Well, I think one of the biggest insights that we had in terms of millennials is the way they look at health and wellness and their gravitational pull towards more fresh foods. And we at Campbell's just made the largest innovation or the largest acquisition of Bolthouse Farms. And Bolthouse Farms is fresh carrots and juice. And I'll just show you some of the work that came out of it. They have this product called Baby Carrot Shakedowns, and it has a seasoning, and you pull the seasoning and you shake it up, and the carrots are coated with either ranch or salsa or chili lime, and 25 calories. And then some of the other work we've done with millennials is our new Go Soup. And this product is in a pouch, and this was designed by millennials. This is creamy red pepper with smoked Gouda, and this is spicy chorizo with pulled chicken and black beans. Not necessarily tomato and chicken noodle, although they're very good sellers. These products are the work of listening and getting inspired by what the consumer wants. The other thing that we noticed was that consumers are looking for easy ways to create dinner, and we have skillet sauces, which are one of the largest behaviors for millennials. And they literally can make shrimp scampi or creamy chipotle with roasted corn and black beans or chicken marsala. And it's easy as 1, 2, 3. You brown the meat, you pour in the sauce, and you serve over rice or pasta. Even I can cook this. And then take a picture, put it on your Facebook page, and tell all your friends about it. And it's really working for us. So we're a new Campbell's here.
How many other people thought baby carrots really were baby carrots? Go on, you can own up. Purpose-based marketing is something that emerged from, Chris talked about it a little bit, Marcus talked about it. How does that fit into Campbell's and Campbell's creativity?
Yeah. I believe it's very, very important to be purposeful in what you do. Right now, we have a higher order purpose of nourishing people's lives everywhere, every day, and a real mission of producing food and beverage for the next generations. And I think those really are guiding us. We also recognize, too, that we have to turn around our company. Our company has great ROIC, has great cash flow, has great margins, but we've had sluggish sales growth. So driving profitable net sales growth and creating value for our shareholders is also part of our purpose to be in business. And so I think it's the importance, and I personally stand for this, and that is you have to make a profit, but you also have to make a difference.
Turning now, if I may, to your career and what's worked, and which it clearly has. I was reading Sheryl Sandberg's book over the weekend, and she makes an interesting point about mentors, which I know is something you're very, very strong on. Her position is that instead of getting a mentor and then excelling, if you excel, you'll get a mentor. And I just wondered who the mentors you've got are, and what you feel like you learn from them.
Well, I think that mentoring has to be pretty strategic, and And there are those that can mentor you on subject matters, and then there are also sponsors. Sponsors are people in your life that will open doors for you. So, for example, the first district manager that hired me at Procter & Gamble in sales was a guy by the name of Warren Redmond, and I was the first woman in the sales force. And so taking that leap and making sure that he invested in my training and development so that I could be successful as a salesperson for P&G was incredible. But there have been lots of people along the way, and I think what I learned was, first of all, it's really important to build your relationships. It's really important to be savvy about the politics in organizations, and it's really important to have senior people who can help you be successful. You cannot do this by yourself. Person that was instrumental in helping me with the CEO transition was Doug Conant. And Doug was the former CEO of Campbell Soup, and I worked for Doug for many years at Campbell's and also at Nabisco. And so there are people in your lives that really do have an impact.
You have said that you see the world through Irish eyes, and those eyes are smiling. I actually happen to know that that's a general statement about your kind of optimism and energy, but as you look forward through perhaps more or less rosy glasses, what are the things that you are smiling about, and what are the things that you feel optimistic about?
It's a great question, and I definitely tend to be the optimist, but I'm also a realist, and I remember when I got the position of CEO, and you have to understand, this was a life goal for me, and I called my parents and I said, Mom, Dad, I did it. I became CEO of Campbell Soup. This is such an honor. And they paused a minute and said, Denise, we're really proud of you. And my father said, what's your next goal? And I said, to build a great company. And that's really what drives me is, so when I see it as smiling, I am looking at all of the good things I have to work with at Campbell's. Phenomenal brands, great partnerships, phenomenal talent. But there's a lot of things at Campbell's that has to change. And change isn't scary to me, it's exciting. It's something to embrace and lead. And so that's what I'm doing, and I'm spending 24/7 doing it. And the people at Campbell's are really responding. And it's not easy, it's heavy lifting for all of us. But I have just great joy out of what is in store for this company and its future.
You obviously do enjoy it. Ladies and gentlemen, Denise Morrison.
Thank you.